You're listening to Phonic on 106.8. You're listening to Phonic on 106.8 FM. Listening to Phonic Radio.
I've got my guest here in the studio. It's Laura Walker. Welcome.
Hello, thank you very much. I feel very grateful for being on here.
Oh, it's so good to have you on. I'll just sort of brief you. I mean, Laura's obviously going to talk, but Laura, as I said before, is the co-founder of Memory Matters Southwest and Moment Cafe and Hub. Mm-hmm. And people are probably thinking that listening, what on earth is that? So we're now going to talk about it. So Laura, welcome. Thanks for coming into the studio. And I had the pleasure of meeting you, it was a couple of months ago now, wasn't it? Because I'd heard about some of the great work that you're doing, and I've kind of known of your work and Kate's work for the last few years. So it's really nice to have you in the studio. So we're going to first chat about Memory Matters Southwest. Mm-hmm. So Tell me about that. Tell me more about that.
It's a little bit of story behind sort of where Memory Matters came from. So Kate and I were both nurses, and it kind of started when I was a student nurse. I had the pleasure of working at Chadwell Day Hospital, which was in Paignton at the time. I was doing my nurse training in Torbay. Absolutely loved it. It was brilliant. So where somebody would get their diagnosis there, so they would see a psychologist, they'd see a nurse, they'd see all the specialists on one day, they would get their diagnosis, and then straight after that they would get treatment. And it would be psychosocial treatment. So it would be things like reminiscence therapy, word games, all sort of peer support groups. And I loved it. I absolutely loved the placement there. And then kind of fast forward my life on as a nurse, of having qualified and then sort of taken different jobs in different places, and this kind of closure of those day hospitals, they just didn't exist anymore. Certainly that there hadn't been any in Cornwall, especially for a long time. So there was a massive gap there for people in terms of anything after getting a diagnosis, and it's very much like that now. And I was working in sort of care establishments as a nurse, and trying really hard to do my best. But after every shift, I would just feel like this doesn't feel right. You know, there are people who are just not engaged when they could be. And part of it was feeling like I'd let them down because I didn't have time, because I was constantly doing drugs rounds and doing calls to doctors. We didn't have enough staff. It wasn't great. And I worked in lots of establishments like that.
I'm just thinking as you're saying that, Laura, so and I suppose must have been really difficult because you'd had that learning, that psychosocial understanding, which maybe other people hadn't. So you knew what you could do.
Absolutely.
That must have been really difficult.
Absolutely. I think I was shown very early on that it was possible to live really well with dementia, and I was shown by some fantastic mentors, you know, in the place where I worked there. So sort of going out on my own and trying to make that happen where perhaps you didn't have the backing to be able to do it well, it really grated. So sort of fast forwarding that onwards to a shift from hell, working in a care home, and just feeling like, do you know, I can't do this anymore. I just feel like I'm letting people down. I remember sitting in the bath thinking, I can't do it. I can't do this. There must be something that I can do. And the next day I called up my sister-in-law, who's also a nurse, and Kate and I, started a partnership really from there. Kate is one of those people who's just brilliant at crossing the T's and dotting the I's, and I'll say, I've got an idea. Yeah. And she'll say, whoa, hang on a minute, how are we going to make that happen? Yeah. And that's how Memory Matters started. And we were approached by the Primary Care Trust to provide some training into residential care homes to try and bring down the use of antipsychotic drugs by using really lovely psychosocial approaches and environment and all of those things. And we loved it. And then from there, we thought we would grow sort of our package of training. But again, funding is always really difficult. Tricky. So we just decided to do it ourselves, and we started providing day clubs and one-to-one activity work for people in the community. And it's really gone from there. It's really grown over the last 7 years, and created a massive impact for people. And last year, or the year before last, we received funding from the big lottery to roll out a big project in Cornwall where we run full days for people, so they come along and spend the morning doing cognitive stimulation therapy, which is very much based in that work that I was doing all those years ago, but now has such a good evidence base in terms of increasing quality of life and cognition as well, which is really exciting. You know, there are things we can do. So
can I just say, I'm just thinking, Laura, as you're saying that, sorry to interrupt, but I'm just thinking that for some people that are listening, they may be thinking, well, what is cognitive stimulation therapy? Could you kind of summarise what that is?
Yeah, absolutely. So what it is because it does sound like a real mouthful, doesn't it? And probably quite scary to you. I think lots of people often get it mixed up with cognitive behavioural therapy. Absolutely not the same thing at all. Cognitive stimulation therapy is about stimulating the brain. So it's about having conversations, but doing them in such a way that you're really stimulating, you know, different areas of the brain, different thinking, if you like. So rather than, if you think about when we reminisce, we go over the same story again and again, which is great. It's really important that we do that, because actually that's who we are, that's our identity, and that's how we connect with our identity. But in cognitive stimulation therapy, you would take that reminiscence and then you would throw in a question that might compare it to the here and now, or we might wonder around it. So we might say, I wonder what that felt like, or I wonder what that smelt like, or sounded like. So you're bringing in the senses as well.
Yeah.
And that, you know, that's it. But it's very structured, so that the sessions start and finish in the same way. We always start with a song. There's sort of looking at current affairs, so we look at the newspaper, and then there's a topic in the middle which is different every week. And they stick very rigidly, I guess, to the cognitive stimulation therapy principles, which are about sort of stretching people to the point where they are stretched but not uncomfortable.
Yes.
So that's it in a nutshell, and it's something that we champion all the time, because a lot of people don't know about it. And the NICE guidelines are very, very clear, and they state that people with a diagnosis of mild to moderate dementia should be able to access cognitive stimulation therapy. So, and I think, taking me back to those early days as a student nurse, that's exactly what happened. You got your diagnosis, and in the next week you were in a group. And that's what I want to see. So we feel like we won't stop until that's happening, and we're finding lots of creative ways to do that. You know, initially we felt like, it would be great if this was commissioned, and I think we can't rely on that anymore.
No, not at all. You've got to be dynamic.
Absolutely. And
Make
you have to
things
think
happen.
creatively and think it's okay to rely on grants to test stuff, but you can't expect to rely on grants forever. So how can we embed cognitive stimulation therapy into communities so people can access it regardless of whether there's funding or, you know, whether the government, this government or the next government, are going to back it. It has to be there for people. So that's what we're about, really, and that's what Memory Matters is about. But we provide training as well. So we do the two things, the two arms, and any profits from our training, of course, then go into helping us to provide those day clubs, which are hard to sustain.
I can imagine. I'm just thinking, so let's walk through it. So somebody gets a diagnosis. I mean, obviously we know that some people receive a timely diagnosis and some people don't. So I mean, I'm thinking out loud, really, and I'm thinking, if it was somebody that had a diagnosis and it was an early diagnosis, they only just, you know, it was early stages, would that be something they'd want to go to at that point? I'm just wondering.
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, and I think some people do. Some people, you know, just last week I had a phone call from a gentleman who had literally just received his diagnosis, and he'd got on the internet and looked at what is there in my area and came across us, and that's exactly where I want to be. That's where I want Memory Matters to be.
Isn't it?
So yeah, and he engaged. He came along to the first group, and he'll do sort of 24 weeks worth, which is what the lottery funds. So yeah, some people don't want to, and I think that's absolutely right that some people don't as well. That perhaps there's a lot of getting used to the fact that you've got this diagnosis. But part of what we do is get people kind of used to that, and also seeing that doesn't have to be the end of the world, although it may of course feel like that when you've just got your diagnosis, and we'll always be there. So if we're not not ready for it now, then, you know, wait and come back at another time. And that happens as well. Some people will say, well, I'm not ready. And certainly with this project, because it's a full day, it's a long time,
It is a long time, yeah.
You know, and people will say, well, that feels more like daycare, you know, and that's not where I'm going. It really isn't. I think once they experience it, they realise it isn't. But yeah, and we also encourage people to come if they just want to come for the CST session, which is just an hour. Right. They can do that too. But most of the time, they make friends and they want to stay because they're with people who are in the same boat, going through the same stuff.
So for example, if someone got the diagnosis and they came along, they are entitled to the 24 weeks, and it's every week for 24 weeks consecutive. Yeah,
and that, unfortunately, it's only in Cornwall, the 24 weeks.
Right,
yeah.
Okay.
So, and the day club that we run at the moment in Devon is at Plymouth. But that's where we're going next, is how can we get these clubs embedded in communities, because that's where they need to be. So our very first club was in a community centre in Lostwithiel. I just had one of my babies, my third baby, so I had her in a sling, and we just started, and we thought, right, we'll run it, and it was really successful. But yeah, so we're tweaking that model to be able to provide it everywhere, so anybody could have a Memory Matters club, you know, if they can sort of get the funding together to be able to run them, and we'll support them to do that.
That's amazing. It's just, I get so inspired hearing the work that people are doing in the community, which is why this show's really important to showcase some of the great work, 'cause people just don't get to hear about it unless, like you said, they're looking on the internet for something specific. So GP practices in Cornwall would know about that.
Yeah, they do, and it's really dependent on the practices. I think you know, we find it difficult. Things are changing because, you know, it used to be that everything was provided free on the NHS, and unfortunately, you know, with the cuts, that's not happening for preventative work as much anymore. So there's a lot to be done in terms of building relationships with general practitioners for them. And for them, when we do have those conversations, it's very much about, but they really need to trust the quality of what they're recommending to patients, and we can only do that by inviting them along and telling them what we do. And of course, you know, that takes time. But we have, you know, over the last 7 years, we have managed to get a really good reputation in the quality of what we provide, because we really believe in it, and also, you know, it's evidence-based, so we have to deliver it correctly. Otherwise, you know, you're not doing it right. So.
And is it you and Kate that deliver that, or is it just
no?
you?
So we've got our own staff. So we've got lead facilitators who do that. So they're obviously all trained by us. We do cognitive stimulation therapy training as well. So sometimes Kate and I are sort of going up to Liverpool to deliver things. So we've got staff. We've got lead facilitators and then co-facilitators, and a band of volunteers. We've got some wonderful people who just really get it and really see the vision, and that's really important, I think.
That's incredible. So, And did you personally, was it Kate that bidded for the big lottery?
I did the big lottery bid. I tend to do the bidding. So and that's something, again, never done it before.
No,
you know, all of this is a massive learning curve. You know, and you know, it's been 7 years. It's been hard work, and every day we're learning. But I think it's just having that vision and sort of feeling that I can always take myself back to sitting in that bath and thinking, you know, I just want to at least have tried.
So you know, I sort of hear when you're chatting away, I'm hearing sort of aspects of myself in that, and how you just have this, you know, sent years ago of, you know, we've got to be able to do something with this. What can we do? And the frustration of how do we make that happen, and who do we reach, and how does that work? And
absolutely.
so I totally get what you're saying.
I think kindred spirits, isn't it? I mean, I really do see you've done so much, and it's been amazing. It's a journey, isn't it?
It is. And I think, as you said, and that reminded me, you know, we're learning by default, really, aren't we? And as you said, you know, you've got the model in Cornwall, you can then tweak that, and you've got something really special.
And I think it's about mindset a little bit as well, because you could say, okay, we're now going into the last year of our 3-year funding, so I could say, oh well, that was good that we managed to do that for 3 years. But actually what I'm thinking is, okay, what are we going to do with what we've learned in that 3 years to ensure that it impacts as many people as it possibly can?
Totally.
So
that's the next part of it.
The next stage, definitely. I mean, we've tried all sorts of things. We've sort of provided a bit of respite as well down in Cornwall, sort of full day, sort of daycare if you like as well, because we've got the skills to do it. But it's not necessarily where Memory Matters was meant to be.
No.
Because we are sort of there at the point of diagnosis, mild to moderate support. So the next year we will be kind of coming back into that original vision that we had and sort of moving forward.
Yeah. So exciting. So that's your Memory Matters Southwest.
Yeah, and obviously there's the training as well. So we've got this sort of Exploring Dementia training that we run, which is just a great bit of training for people in terms of, even if you don't know anything about dementia, even if you don't know anyone living with dementia, there's so much to learn about communication, about just what it might feel like to experience those symptoms. And that's what we do, is we step people through what you might feel like could be completely different to the person sat next to you, and that's big learning. So. And
tell me about that then. Is that 1 day? Is it 2 day? How does that work?
It's just a half-day workshop. But I have to say, every time I run it, I always get the feedback on the feedback forms. Always says, this could be a full day. Make it a full day.
I can imagine.
But often people can't give the time, and it is meant to catch anybody who's even just a little bit curious about dementia. So I have all sorts of people. I've had nurses on the day off coming in. I've had builders coming in. I've had all sorts of people, and that's exactly what I wanted. For it to be sort of some bit of an experiential.
And how often do you run those?
Usually we do it once a month. Sometimes it's once every 2 months, and we run that down in Plymouth.
And you facilitate that?
Yes, I do. Yeah, there's some things that I feel like I always want to do that. Some things I can give over and say, okay, you do that now. But that's something that I really like to deliver.
I totally get that. From lots of different experiences myself as well. You don't want to let go of it, because probably a lot you see at the end of that half day how inspired people are, and they think, really, is that what it? I didn't realise it was like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
and I think the other thing is, because we tend to really stay sort of in the business as well as on it.
Yes.
So we are meeting with people every day who are living with dementia. We're able to talk about yesterday, my experience with Bill yesterday, or Jim yesterday. And so it's always fresh, and it's always sort of real. So sort of real life examples.
And I was going to say leading by example as well. What we're going to do after we've heard the song that you requested is talk about Moments Cafe and Hub, which I'm really, it's all so inspiring stuff, the work you and Kate are doing, it really is. But you're going to introduce tell us a story about your song.
I've chosen this song. This is Sad Lisa by Cat Stevens, and the reason that I've chosen this song is that I remember, again, it's that sort of remembering working in sort of environments that perhaps are not great for people living with dementia, and I play the guitar a little bit, and I learnt this song to sing because it just really encapsulates what I saw when watching a woman who would walk up and down the ward, and I just love this song. It just really reminds me of that, and I always think about that patient that I couldn't quite reach.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. And it is
Sad Lisa.
Yeah, by Cat Stevens. Hi Laura, we've been chatting away throughout the whole of that song. We were trying to be inspired and listen to it, and and then I just had so many questions for Laura. So yeah, we're back. Now we're going to talk about Moments Cafe and Hub in Plymouth, which is where I met you a couple of months ago, and I'd heard about this, and I'm not going to share the story because that's Laura's part, but it's such an amazing place. Tell us about Moments Cafe and Hub, and what happened and how it all came about.
So then there's another story. We've just talked about Memory Matters Southwest and what we're doing there, and it's always been a real struggle in terms of sustainability. Really, we're a non-profit organisation, so we were at a board meeting one day, and we've got two non-execs who are absolutely brilliant. One of them, Gareth Hart, had said, there's some funding available for empty shops in Plymouth, and what do you think about going for something? And we sort of said, well, what would we do? And then what would we do in a shop? And he said, well, what about a cafe? And in that moment, we thought, well, that seems completely bonkers because neither of us have ever done anything with a cafe before. So the discussion went on, and we decided that we would do a feasibility study because we had nothing to lose. Let's look at a reminiscent style cafe. We used our creative imagination went wild as we said, well, you could have the 1950s area and the 1960s area. You could have all the paraphernalia from those days, and serve, you know, good coffee and cakes and things to eat. So we did the feasibility study, and it came back as a really good business plan, with the idea that the profits from the cafe would then feed into Memory Matters Southwest to enable us to sustain the clubs. So that's the long story, and it was a long time from the idea to actually opening, but we opened in March of this year.
Can I just? I've got to interrupt on this because when did you have the idea, out of interest?
I think it was 3 years before we opened.
Okay,
yeah.
so the reason I'm asking that is because I didn't know about that.
Okay.
So I'm learning about that. But what I do know about, and what I saw on social media, because it's just such an amazing tool for sharing, is that this was going to happen November time, I think it came up. Would it have been? Yeah. And I remember seeing it said, you know, we're going to crowdfund. And I'm a real advocate for crowdfunding. I've just done some recently myself, which worked brilliantly, but it is a gamble.
Yeah, it is.
And then I think you were looking for, was it 12,000?
Yeah.
Was it something like that?
Yeah.
And I was just seeing this money going up. And next minute, not only did you get the money and more, how much did you get in the end? It's maybe 16, maybe more. I don't remember. But you got an excess of what you wanted.
We did.
But also, what I found incredibly amazing was how quickly, from receiving that money, it opened.
Yeah,
I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, so just to say that lots of the funding also came from the council as well. So we had part grant and part loan.
Yeah.
Now the reason that we had to crowdfund was because initially the feasibility study was done on a much smaller scale because we didn't have a building. So the whole thing was about us being in an empty shop building. When it came to it, there were no empty shops that we could use. So when we did find one, we just went for it. But it was big, and Moments Cafe is big. It's, as you know,
it's
it
brilliant.
sort of looks like it's quite small from the front, but actually there's a lot of space and a massive amount of space upstairs, which I'll go into in a minute. But yeah, so we didn't have enough, basically. So we had to turn to people in the community to ask them to help us, and everyone said to us, don't do a crowdfunder before Christmas. That's the worst time to do a crowdfunder. And we thought, well, we don't have a choice. We've got to raise this money, and we're just going to have to trust. And we did. And Kate and I don't know if you saw it, but did a very grainy video. Sat in the cafe. Then in a terrible state. I mean, the building was really very different to how it looks now. Yeah. We sort of just talked to the iPad and pleaded people to put their hands in their pockets before Christmas. And oh my goodness, we're just so grateful. People were amazing, from family and friends to people that we've never even met. So we were match funded as well by the council again and
Fantastic.
by Santander. And Carers Break CIC were really generous. I mean, the generosity of people has just been amazing, and that's just some of it. The behind the scenes stuff that people have done. The building firm were just RJB Builders were absolutely amazing in terms of
brilliant.
Helping us in ways you wouldn't imagine. And lots of companies who stepped forward and said. A good example is that we didn't have, the part of a cafe where you serve your coffee from. We hadn't really thought about how that was going to work, and we didn't really have anything. So Howden stepped in and gave us a whole kitchen.
Fantastic.
Surface, and came and put that in for us. So I just can't tell you about the amount of people. I wouldn't be able to name them all.
No. So we'll just say thank you to everyone.
Thanks everybody.
You're all amazing. You're all amazing.
Yeah, and that leads us to where we are now with a cafe, thriving cafe, open in the city centre.
And it really is. It's right in the city.
It really is.
Right smack in the city centre of Plymouth. It's brilliant.
And the feedback's really good, and people come and they bring their family back and they keep coming back. We've only been open since March, but It's going really well. And then the upstairs is this dementia information centre, and I'm really excited that I'm able to say, because I was under embargo, but I'm allowed to say that we've received funding from the lottery again.
Brilliant.
To provide a dementia discovery zone. So that's going to be a place where we can engage young people. We can bring schools in to come and learn about the brain and about dementia.
That's fantastic.
People who are worried about their memory will be able to come in and access advice and help on the high street, which is just brilliant. So they don't have to get, they don't have to go to the doctor, or I'm not saying don't go to the doctor. Do that. Definitely do that.
Absolutely, of course.
But what I mean is that they don't have to make an appointment to go and find stuff out.
Yeah.
They can just drop into the cafe, come upstairs, and speak to a volunteer who'll be trained with the right advice at the right time. So that's sort of in the middle, and then we've got different rooms as well that we hire out, and that's part of the business plan. So we really need sort of other businesses to come and collaborate with us and use those rooms, and because all the profits are going into Memory Matters. So
absolutely, so it's getting out there, isn't it? And letting people know about it, which again here is another good platform. It's a fantastic hub, literally, isn't it? You've got the coffee shop downstairs. You've got little areas of different eras. And I remember when you were crowdfunding, and after that, when you were sort of pulling things together, how you were saying, we've just been donated this, and we've just been, again, it's the power of community. And when people hear about it, they just feel inspired to help.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we want. It's about, for Kate and I, it's about collaboration, because we don't see enough of that, and it's about every single organisation who helps people living with dementia, and everybody to come together to make this work, because it can't just be about us. It has to be about everybody. And I think that's what I love about it being a hub, is that everyone can be there, everyone's information can be, it doesn't matter who you are. It's about sort of, really sort of mixing it all, putting it all in the mixing pot, so that people have choices, because that's what we need, isn't it? We want, one thing might work for one person but not for another, so we need as much going on as possible.
I want one in Exeter. Love one in Exeter.
That is the big dream, is that, let's get this model working, and tweaking it and making it work. And we've got some amazing advisors. I can't, again, I'm so grateful for the amount of people that help us on a daily basis. We're 2 nurses, do you know what I mean? And
2 inspiring nurses. More than that.
And it's just amazing to the help that we get from experts who do know and who can advise us and help us. And I think if we can get that model right, then there's no reason why we can't have one in Exeter, or we can't have one in Bristol, or
absolutely.
Let's see. And what a great model that would be, if that creates the profits to be able to sort of then feed into sort of a charity which is around helping people with dementia. So that's where we're going, definitely.
I mean, it's so important, isn't it? Dementia, I know I bang on about it all the time. It's so complex. There's so many strands to it, and intricacies, and I see so many people that they hear they got a diagnosis, and it's like, what do I do? There's all this. How do I navigate this system? So just knowing, if you're in Plymouth, that there's this hub, you can go there.
Absolutely. So you'll be able to drop in and say, this is where I am, this is where I'm at. And it's happening now. We're getting people on a daily basis coming in, and saying, I'm really struggling. My dad's got dementia, but he's not able to take that on board, or he's in denial, or he doesn't want. What do I do? That's a really common question. What do I do? And then people who themselves are diagnosed, who come in and say, I just don't know where I should be going, what I should be doing, because it's not clear. And I hope that that's what we do, that the hub gives people clarity, and that when they think about dementia, or that a friend or anybody has a difficulty, even just sort of having difficulties with their memory, just to kind of get some reassurance, or whatever it is, just to come along.
It's something very special, really, really special. It's been so great to have you chatting about all your amazing work. We could literally talk for the whole show, couldn't we?
Thank you.
And just before you go, 2 things. One, I saw on social media that you're up for some awards. You've been nominated for something. What have you been nominated for?
I only found out about this morning, but it's the Herald City and Waterfront Awards.
Wow.
So in 4 categories. So it's Best Customer Service, Best Food on the Go, best sustainability business and best cafe. So
Wow.
that's amazing. So yeah, if anybody fancies voting,
Yeah, get on there and do it.
go ahead.
Yeah.
That's really, we weren't expecting that, and that's really very exciting.
That's really
just
exciting.
to be nominated. So
Of course it is. Yeah,
absolutely.
And when were you here? Do you know?
I
when?
don't know. I did see that the voting stops in September. So
Oh right, so
I
later
don't
on in the year.
Really don't know
We'll
much
watch
about
this space
it. But
because it's very fresh, isn't it?
Yeah.
You just heard about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So
Thank you.
email addresses, website to share with people.
So
Yep.
www.memorymatterssw.co.uk. So that's Memory Matters email address. And then for the cafe, for Moments, it's moments-cafe.com.
Take a look at those websites because they're great, and Kate and Laura are absolutely brilliant. So thank you so much for coming in today.
Thank you.
And we'll see you soon.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
You're very welcome.